All right, seeing that it's 8 o'clock, we'll get started. I want to welcome everyone to a special meeting of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors on June 24th. Michelle, would you call the roll, please?
Director Bernstein,
Present.
Director Jones,
Here.
Director Crawley,
Present.
Director Solano,
Here.
Director McLaughlin.
Here. Would you please stand and join me to the pledge, in the pledge of the flag? I pledge allegiance
To
the
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for which
it
it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Great, thank you. All right, we just have one item on the agenda this evening, and it's one that was considered at our board meeting on June 15th. But some additional information has become known, and staff requested that we reconsider. Before we get into it, I think I've spent a considerable amount of time over the last couple of days on this issue, and I've spoken with a number of people, staff and council and others. I think it might be helpful to share that with you. So, I'll offer a summary of what I've learned and where I think we're at on this issue. The agenda item is adopt a resolution of intention to approve a contract amendment for the post-retirement survivor continuance benefit. I'll just refer to it as survivor benefit in shorthand for miscellaneous members between CalPERS and the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors. Just by way of background, 28 years ago, 1993, the board at the time approved this survivor benefit for administrative employees within the miscellaneous group. Moving forward to December of last year, during contract communications with AFSCME, who represents a number of the miscellaneous or a number of the employees from that miscellaneous group, it was discovered that a contract was not executed with CalPERS in 1993. So in short, the benefits promised in 1993 were not in place. No contract was executed, no premiums in effect were paid. So in February 2021, district staff submitted a request to CalPERS for valuation. In other words, what would it cost the district to provide this benefit and restart the effort to provide this benefit. At our last meeting on June 15th, the board was presented with a resolution of intent. That's the start of the process with CalPERS to begin to extend this offer to all of our miscellaneous employees. If you recall at the last meeting, I raised the issue of which employee group was affected. Was it just those handful of employees that were named in the 1993 resolution, or was it all the miscellaneous employees? And I'll ask Stephen Miller to speak to this point later, but I think it's quite clear in the government code that it is. If you extend it to one group of miscellaneous employees, it has to be extended to all employees in that group. At our meeting, at the board meeting on June 15th, the board elected not to take action on this matter pending further review. And as I said, at the request of staff, we're here to reconsider that. One of the items I became aware of today in the staff report, it says that once the board approves this resolution of intent, It would go to CalPERS. They would take whatever action they needed to take, and it would come back to the board on August 17th at our August board meeting. In consultation with Francine this afternoon, I learned that that's the earliest it could be approved. But apparently we have up to 12 months to approve the contract amendment with CalPERS. So that extends the window for us considerably here. I believe since our last meeting as well on June 15th on this matter, our council has discussed with our HR manager the process for evaluating, analyzing this issue to find the right consultants to advise us on this matter. The big issue, this intent, this resolution of intent is before us tonight, but there's a much larger issue. And we talked about this on the 15th. There's this 28-year period in which we have a benefit that was promised but not funded. And then this separate issue of prospectively considering this issue and extending it to all miscellaneous employees. So with that, if I got any of that wrong, Francine or Stephen, please correct me. Or if I left anything out that you think is significant or relevant, this would be a good time to bring that forward.
Actually, you were perfect, right on point and very clear. I do just have a couple things to add if I can have a moment.
We can't hear you, Francine.
Yeah, Francine,
In and out.
that same audio issue. While you're doing that, Stephen, perhaps you could discuss your review of those government code sections that discuss, which group is included.
Sure. It's really, like with anything having to do with public employment retirement law, there are complexities, but the short answer is exactly as you indicated. The amendment must cover all non-safety personnel. This is what what PERS refers to as the quote equal benefit rule, and it's pretty clearly spelled out in the government code and in PERS set of contract amendment procedures. I don't know that I have really anything to add except that this is a benefit that has been promised to the members of one union, but the amendment to the CalPERS agreement will apply to all non-safety miscellaneous personnel, not just those in the AFSCME bargaining unit.
All right, thank you.
Right. So Jim, just let me clarify from my understanding, Steve, that means the unrepresented and the confidentials, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that's right. I'll make sure Francine thinks that's right, but not the non-safety people. So yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Francine, are you back with us?
Now you're just muted, Francine.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Am I choppy or I'm okay?
No, you're clear. You're clear right now.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on, but I was trying to do my iPad too, but for some reason it won't launch it on there. So sorry. Stephen, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
I don't think I had a question. I just wanted to say that I agreed with you that this would apply to all non-safety people. I guess Director Chan-Corrali's question was, did this include confidential employees? And the answer is
right.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. Director Crowley, it does. And it actually, I had mentioned in my report the 1993, because that was the earliest that I found mention of this benefit for any group of classifications that would be considered miscellaneous. But actually, it was also present in the 2008 plan,
Right.
Where it didn't really limit to just administrative classifications, the 3 or 4 that were identified, but actually it says that this is for all unrepresented employees, which would include confidential as well.
So I have another question. So this was before there was the AFSCME bargaining unit, when this
Correct.
whole thing started, right? Okay. So can you just remind, I think, when did we get when did they form their bargaining unit? In 2007-ish? I think that's right.
I think it was, I believe it was 2008 when they formed.
Okay.
They may have started meeting in 2008, but I think the first email from the chief recognizing them as a group was in 2008.
Okay. So that means that we had this situation going on for since 1993 to 2007 without the bargaining unit there. So this has really nothing to do with them as much as the whole entire, the non-sworn employees, right?
Yeah, what CalPERS would call miscellaneous. So
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm getting it clear in my head that this has nothing to do with AFSCME, really. This is pre-AFSCME that all of this happened.
Yeah, AFSCME
Okay.
brought it forward because they had someone looking into retirement, and when they found out that it wasn't covered, they had brought it forward to the district. Because this is something that they're very interested in and wanted to know why it wasn't in the plan.
Right, but we're talking about employees who were here before AFSCME was even formed, is what I'm trying to make myself
so the
clear on.
So the pool is much bigger than the 26 employees that we currently have, at the district. I was kind of doing some research on CalPERS to pull anyone that actually currently is a retired annuitant drawing funds, someone that is currently has funds on deposit, but maybe not actively contributing. And then, removing anyone that has removed their funds from CalPERS. And so far, that number looks like it may be around 35, 36, but out of that group, there's some that have invested. So there's maybe about 5 or 6 that have invested with CalPERS yet. And, maybe if they never vest, they might withdraw those funds. We had one annuitant that actually left before they passed away before retirement. And because this is a post-retirement benefit, that benefit wouldn't apply to that person. So it's going to take a lot of kind of analysis and data scrubbing to look at kind of the whole picture. But that's kind of what I initially saw was about 36-ish of the people that are no longer here. And out of that, it might not apply to all.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the timeline straight in my head too. Thanks.
Any other questions of Francine or Stephen?
So is it my understanding that that this is maybe a 2 or 3-step process, with the first process being to pass the resolution with CalPERS, kind of getting that straightened out, and then looking at any other looking at the dollar amount, looking at the people that's going to be involved, which I think the groups are already kind of sorted out a little bit about who they are, but in terms of just understanding what the numbers are going to look like at that point. Is that somewhat in the ballpark of where we are?
That's exactly correct, Director Jones. And that's kind of why I didn't amend my staff report. It wasn't to, not include any information, but I tried to stay very focused on what we were asking the board for approval for. Even though it is very much a larger problem and is a multi-step, even for the contract resolution with CalPERS is a multi-step, with the resolution of intention just being one step of that process. And the resolution of intention is just that, it's an intention and not binding. So the district can, if the board chose, approve it. And if later decided that there was, some other thing, it wouldn't be a binding kind of option, but it's something that we have to do to start the process that CalPERS requires.
So is my assumption, oh,
I'm sorry, Robert, if you want to finish your question.
sure. So my assumption is that if this, the first step in improving is denied, will still leave the door open for us at some point in time to do something different, but at least get the process going with CalPERS, which I assume there's a time period in terms of how long it may take them to kind of pull whatever documentation they need to put together to get back to us on. So is there such a time frame that we're working on? Because I know, Jim, you mentioned something about 12 months as a possibility, but it kind of leads me to question if we're going to take may take up to 12 months or have this 12 months. Is CalPERS going to take about 12 months?
No. Yeah, no, actually not. CalPERS won't take 12 months, but that's kind of our grace period, if you want to call it, that we have to implement the contract amendment. So it wouldn't take them 12 months, and but they're allowing us that. They're saying that you have up until July 1, 2022 to amend the contract to reflect this benefit if you chose. If we didn't, and that day came and passed, then we would have to go through the process of a resolution of intention.
So what would happen? Oh,
I'm sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
I just one last thing and I'm done.
No, go ahead, Robert.
I yield the floor. So what happens if people already retired that was under this assumption, and then the people going to retire between now and maybe the end of the year? Who knows? Hope they stay around with us longer than that. But what if they do? How do we handle those individuals, past and present, who will retire at that point? Is all this going to be retroactive as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what we have to look at, and that's what Stephen and I have talked about, is kind of assessing the district's obligation and what that pool looks like. And we would actually have to look at each employee individually with the years of service that would have been under the contract provision, and determine what the best way to approach that would be. And in there we would need some help from the contract. It is pretty complicated. So to determine how we could best kind of tackle that piece of it.
All right, thank you.
Rob and then Chuck.
Thank you, Jim. Robert, thank you. That was one of my questions I was going to ask, involving the past employees and the current employees. And it looks like, Francine, there has to be an individual calculation on every employee because of the different job descriptions and salaries and whatever that percentage is, correct?
Yeah, so there's so many things that go into it when CalPERS is doing their kind of evaluations. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Jim, I just have two more questions, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Francine, I just want to reemphasize, thank you for the first pack. And of course, the second one is basically the same, but this was a lot of work, and gosh, I really appreciate you coming forward the way it has. But, how long have we known about this?
So, from what I understand, and I just to give you a reference and maybe kind of just like a brief timeline, I began with the district January 19th was my first day.
January of this year?
Yeah, January of this year. AFSCME approached me with an email, and I want to say the date was February 17th. I could be wrong, plus or minus a day. Asking if I had heard about this issue. And I said, no, that, I hadn't heard about it. And I think I later spoke to Ed from Hanson and Bridget about it. She kind of told me what the issue was. But when she forwarded me the email saying, that she wanted to know where we were at with this, and I wasn't really sure what the issue was, there was an email string. And on that email string, there was an email dated December 3rd to Deputy Chief Stevens advising him of this issue. And then Deputy Chief Stevens wrote back to Ashley and said that he would look into it. And I want to say the next week, maybe around December 7th-ish, Deputy Chief Stevens said that that the chief had contracted Hanson Bridget to look into this issue and what our CalPERS contract said regarding this benefit. And then Ed confirmed in an email I had to him that he said that the district had asked them to look into this in early January, and that he confirmed that the CalPERS contract and the MOU weren't aligned, that the language was in the MOU, but not in the CalPERS contract. But then there wasn't really any traction on any steps taken since then. So then I reached out and we requested the valuation from my CalPERS. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You're a little choppy, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why.
No, continue.
But so we requested the valuation from CalPERS, which I believe was February 9. And that takes approximately 3 months just to get the valuation. When we got the valuation, CalPERS, and we got it like it was end of April, beginning of May, they actually sent us 2 copies of each plan. And I wasn't sure why we had 2 copies, so I sent an email. I got an email response back that they basically sent 2 in error. They had a change to make to one of the valuations, and then they would resend it to us. So by the time we got the final and had a chance to review it, it was approximately mid-May. I want to say maybe May 15th, which wouldn't have been in time for the May meeting. And so we brought it to the June meeting. And basically each week during the process, I would update the chief in our one-on-one that we had to let him know where we were at. At the beginning, we didn't have a lot of information, regarding basically the depth of this problem. We had to wait for the valuation and actually several conversations with CalPERS to get real clarity so that we could share kind of the whole picture with the board. But I do apologize that you originally was,
yeah. Jim, may I continue?
Yes, Rob, sure.
Thank you. So we knew in January,
in December.
December, January, okay?
December 3rd, yeah.
December 3rd, okay. So that was the first time that this problem raised its head. And we're looking at basically February when there was an inquiry to CalPERS to get the numbers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Who did you involve there in February to, involving to get CalPERS involvement in it?
Who at CalPERS did I speak to?
No. Was the chief aware of this going to CalPERS in February?
Yes, because I asked for permission to request the valuation and to pay for the valuation.
So we've known about this since February 2021, that it was going to CalPERS, and it would have been a huge problem for us relative to not only our pension, but the past employees that were under miscellaneous, right?
Yeah, I think at the time, we didn't know, again, the depth of the problem. What we kind of thought, and CalPERS actually didn't clarify this until after the valuation was provided to me, and I asked specifically the question, because when I kept asking the question about when it would be effective and what the benefit would be, I was told that it would be effective, typically the first of the month following your board approval of the amendment, and that the benefit would be 50%. And I said, okay, but but it's actually not 50%. And I think what we should have been told is that it would be up to 50% because,
Jim?
sorry. my-
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Francine is still, I don't think Francine's finished her answer, Rob.
That's
well,
a good-
she's
the
actually
analysis is
answering
good.
more than I really need. I mean,
That,
yeah, no, that's fine. But what I want to know
yes.
is when did we know that we didn't have a contract, one, with CalPERS, and there was an issue here? And evidently the chief was aware of this in December, January, and then we go into February when we're trying to get a verification as to what our costs are. So I don't understand why this didn't come to the board, Jim, okay? And at least in February, when the evaluation was sent to CalPERS.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I,
is the chief on here? Chief, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. I'm actually pulled over in Milpitas. I was at a meeting at the state today. But to your question, just so you know, no one had an idea of the totality of circumstance involving all of this. And remember, when Jim passed it off and then I passed it off to the attorneys, they also had Eddie Kreisberg, who was dealing with this because AFSCME's in negotiations. So, I think it's easy to say or maybe think that somehow we knew how big this problem was. We had no idea how big this problem was until it went through the valuation process. And even then, Francine wasn't able to get all the answers as she's articulating from PERS to the extent, right? In other words, how big it really was. It was much bigger than we ever thought it was.
Chief, to interrupt you, okay, all due respect, we're looking at a minimum of 26 employees that were affected, that didn't have a contract, that involved their pensions, okay? The board was not notified until May after CalPERS had made some type of a determination, okay? I think that's unacceptable. Definitely not reporting this to the board sooner. We probably would have had enough time from February until this moment here where we could have got a hold of CalPERS or maybe able to at least evaluate maybe the 26 employees that are involved and add the additional, what is it, 62 or 63, Francine?
about 36 is what I can,
Well, I have 26 from our last time. So, but when we go into the 2021, the new contract, we'll have how many employees, Francine, in that?
it's 26 current.
Okay, so it's 26 employees that we're dealing with that were not fairly treated. We're not told as a board until last month, or actually at the June meeting. I mean, I think that's unacceptable. Thank you, Jim. That's all I have to say.
All right, Chuck, I think you had your hand raised.
Yes, I wondered if I could ask Mr. Peterson, Mr. Robinson, the actuary. I have 3 or 4 questions.
Sure. Mr. Robinson? I think there we go.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I wanted to ask about Jim's summary a minute ago, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, when he talked about intent, just because I'm trying to understand if there's any things I don't understand about that word. I obviously know what the common meaning of it, but when we express our intent, is there any other obligation that we are incurring in terms of expressing our intent?
Well, first of all, I can't answer specific contract kind of questions. My understanding is until it's fully approved by the board, it doesn't become effective at CalPERS. So there's I think with a lot of our contract changes and things like that, there's an act of intention to change the contract, and then I think you have a final decision to make down the track in order to make.
So I can interpret intent just in the common sense of the word, the common.
That to my understanding, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not in the contracts unit at CalPERS.
Okay.
I think Francine can respond to that, Chuck.
Yeah, if if I could just add, Director Bernstein, that I did check with CalPERS, Stacy Barnett, who is the contract specialist, and she confirmed via email that we could back out of an approved intent of resolution and not be obligated to anything further.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure. My second question relates to the situation of an annuitant withdrawing funds from CalPERS. Does the annuitant control the funds of the survivor, and therefore when the annuitant's funds are removed, the survivor funds are removed also?
Are you referring to somebody who elects a refund of contributions? Is that what?
No, I'm asking for someone who gets out of CalPERS or removes all the money. Does that person remove the survivor's money too, or does the survivor considered a separate account or a separate person?
No, to my knowledge, if a member withdraws their contributions, they're out of the plan, they're out of the system.
And that means the survivor is out also.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure.
Director Bernstein?
Yes.
I just have something to add to that. And in the report, I also got confirmation from CalPERS that we have employees that have done just that, actually former employees. And under their status, it says terminated because they withdrew their funds and are no longer active and would not be eligible for any benefit.
Okay. I just didn't know if they had separate rights under the law.
Let me make one clarifying statement that in our evaluation, we list all the members of the plan, active members, transfers, terminated, and retirees. When we have a member listed as terminated, that means that they still have their funds on deposit with CalPERS, but have not yet commenced receiving a benefit. Any member that's who's elected to receive a refund contribution doesn't appear anywhere in our report because there's no liability attached to that. So just for clarification, that when CalPERS says there are terminated members, those are members that still have their contributions on deposit and will eventually either elect to retire and get a pension or elect to receive a refund of their contributions.
I see. Okay. And whatever they select would affect their survivor also.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that those two parties were linked.
Mhm.
And then I have a question on the, we received an appendix, or attachment, excuse me, attachment B. Do you have the same packet that we do?
I don't. But,
Do you have the do you know what I'm speaking of when I say the attachment A? Do you have a this amendment to the contract? Or do you have a copy of the amendment to the contract that's an exhibit?
I don't.
Julian, it's what Stacy shared when she sent over the resolution. It's just our previous contract.
Oh, okay.
Do you have access to that? I'd like to make reference to something, but if you don't have it.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. If somebody could email it to me, that would be.
Well, then let me ask Francine if she knows on this. Francine, on page 8 of our packet, there is a point number 11.
You mean of attachment B, Chuck, not of the packet, right? Of the attachment B?
It's on page 8 of the packet.
Okay.
Yes, I see it.
Point number 11.
Yes. Item 11, public agency elected.
That's
And yes.
what I would like to know is, do you know if this is just standard boilerplate that's in all of these? Or is this referring to us specifically that we actually took affirmative steps to approve each of these, oh, however many it is, A through J, each of these provisions?
So my understanding is that anything listed in the contract is an optional benefit, and that's how it's titled here is as following optional provisions. So it's not standard, it's items that the district has elected over time. Any non-optional benefits would not be listed in the contract.
Okay, so the ones that are optional, and again, I'm not going to go through each of these. I just want to have a general understanding.
Sure.
At some point in our history, we approved affirmatively. That is, a board took a vote
Yes.
on each one of these things. Is that your understanding?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I do have one last question then for Mr. Robinson. Are you aware if there is any kind of organization, like a consulting organization, that effectively emulates the calculations of CalPERS as a regular business?
I believe there are a number of consulting actuaries out there that provide services to their clients, which include most cities throughout California and public agencies.
And so they would understand the algorithms and so forth that are used by CalPERS.
Yes, and the provisions of the plans and stuff like that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Jim, those were my only questions. I also have a motion to make if nobody else has questions.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution before us, a resolution of intention as stated.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. You know, I'm going to vote to approve this act of intention, but it still doesn't relinquish the chiefs and our responsibility to those employees that are affected on this. And, you know, this is another reason why, you know, we're going forward with that management and audit inspection. So I just wanted to make sure that I don't want to hurt any employees, and I'm sure none of us on the board do either. So we need to have this go forward. So Chuck, thank you for the motion.
Jim?
Chuck?
Yeah, I'd like to respond, Rob. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not, the fact that this is a statement of intention and we have some time to do some work is reassuring to me, because I think we do have some work to do. I have only just one thought to keep in mind here. And again, it's not a matter of fault finding necessarily, but I think it's important to remember that somewhere along the line, it was an administrative employee who failed to do what was necessary to do here. It wasn't the board, and it wasn't, the chief wasn't the chief. And the fact that we haven't discovered it is perhaps a flaw in our system and processes somewhere. But somebody made this error, and it was one of the people who's affected by it. So how shall I say, we're under a large cloud of fault here, and it's up to us to fix the problem.
Jim?
Well, I think I saw Robert's hand first there, Rob.
I want to say I concur with Chuck. I agree with the statement there that, you know, unfortunate that it took 30 years to find that mistake. Like we all have something in our own past that it takes us a lifetime to figure out what they are. Now that we know, it's what we do about it right now. And I think that we're making the first step in making that discovering what it is and fixing it for any future thing that come down the road. And I think we need to get back to our processes and as a board, how things are processed through our board, that no matter what contracts I think we need to establish that process, and hopefully that will solve, hopefully in the future, we won't have to go through this kind of thing again.
Virginia?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Robert and Chuck too, which is the reason I seconded Chuck's motion, which is basically what is on the agenda. So I agree that this has been a 30-year problem, and I want to know, I mean, are we going to be talking about the next steps after this? Is the finance committee going to be looking at something, or is that a little premature right now?
Well,
I want to move forward instead of sitting there pointing fingers. 'Cause this is
Sure.
not one board's problem, not one chief's problem, not, one administrator's problem, but it is a 30-year problem that needs to be resolved. And Robert's right. How we move forward is going to be important.
All right.
Call
Why don't
for the
we,
vote.
if there's no further discussion, why don't we go ahead and
Do the roll
address the
call.
motion? Rob, did you have something?
Yeah, before we vote, I mean, the chief knew about this in February and we weren't informed of it until they got something back from CalPERS. So, I know it's a 1993 problem, or it happened 1993, 1994, but still it was from December on, we should have at least been notified and let us, kind of start working the way we are now. And maybe we would have had this resolved by July 1st. So I'm not saying that it's totally the chief's fault, but it is if we're not notified here until we have to hurry up and get something done, when there was 5 or 6 months here that elapsed and we weren't told about it. So that's my argument. Thank you, Jim.
All right. If there's nothing further, Michelle, would you call the vote, please?
Sure. Director Bernstein? Director Bernstein? Oh,
Aye.
thank you. Director Jones?
Aye.
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director McLaughlin?
Aye. Right, Chuck, did you have something else there?
Well, I think we do need to get some professional assistance on as I asked the question of Mr. Robinson, I think we need some professional assistance in having some software that can analyze specifically what our obligations might be, or let me say not the obligations, what the risks of obligations might be. This is something that cannot be known. The answer can't be known for perhaps as much as 50 years, because we don't know who's going to live and who's going to not live and who's going to divorce and not divorce and all those kinds of things. But at least we could understand the magnitude of the risk. And I'd like to make a motion to authorize our attorney to engage through his law firm some experts that could look at our liabilities here, so that we can meet in closed session and discuss the potential exposures to the district. So my motion is that we ask the attorney to seek professional guidance on CalPERS survivor benefits, so that we can discuss them and understand the financial implication.
Kim,
Sure, second.
I'll second that, but I have a question about that. So probably mostly to Steve, our attorney. So Steve, you have this expertise in-house, correct?
Well, not altogether, as I understand the motion and the issue. I'm not sure it's primarily a legal issue. I think you need some consulting help in the actuarial profession to get an understanding of, as Director Bernstein has indicated, the magnitude of the risk. We certainly have the ability to advise and understand as to not the magnitude of the risk, which is related to who the people are and what the dollars associated with those people are, but we can advise on the likelihood of the risk and what the claims might be and whether those claims are strong claims or weak claims and what the defense is to the claim. You know, it's sort of a two-part inquiry. One, what is the risk of people and money? And the second is, what is the legal risk?
Right.
It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg of which you want to do first, but what I hear the motion from Director Bernstein is to do the chicken first, which is to understand the magnitude of the risk, who the human beings are that are impacted by this, and what the potential size of those claims might be.
Right, but so.
And that's not a legal question. So we would engage an actuarial consultant that we
Right.
would supervise, but it's fundamentally not a legal issue.
Okay,
And
but
I
you
can
could
think of the
help us
people that
get
we
an
would hire.
actuarial, right? Could y'all help
Oh
us?
yeah, I've, as you would imagine, I've sort of been giving this some thought, and I have a couple
Yeah.
of people in mind that I would want to talk to and see. I'm a little concerned that this could become quite expensive, because just understanding getting our arms around this is going to be a little bit tricky at the beginning, at least. So I want to talk to a couple of actuaries and see if they get proposals from them and try and get an understanding of how to do this as efficiently as possible.
So that would be something that y'all could help with based on what Chuck's motion is that correct? That would be the first
Yeah.
step?
Absolutely, and I think it's prudent to have it done through the law firm so that the report comes through us and therefore is a confidential report.
Okay, so Chuck, you're okay with that, then engaging Hanson and Bridget to help us at least find the appropriate firm or,
I think that's the motion.
well, I mean, it
Let
could
me-
be. I just want to make sure that we're all clear
Sure.
on that because that's why I asked the question. I just want to make sure that it's very, very clearly defined because it's going to cost money too.
Chuck, did you have a?
Well, I just want to be precise here. I think actuarial support is part of it because they can do the analysis regarding the risk and likelihoods and the variables that go into these calculations. But essentially, I think what we're going to have to do, well, one option is that we effectively set up a parallel organization to CalPERS. I don't mean selling products or anything, but I think we need perhaps some sort of a financial experts also, not just actuaries, but financial experts who
Right.
know what kind of tools. In other words, are we talking about annuities or convertible annuities or some sort of thing? So I just want to be clear. I said experts, and I think experts is a little bit broader than just actuaries.
Okay, that's why I wanted to ask you, Chuck, because it's not going to just be one single or even just two entities. I think it's gonna require more than we think.
We will be talking to you about this as we go through the process and working with Francine. So you may be right, Director Bernstein, that a way to remedy the risk and mitigate the risk is to set up some kind of an insurance pool or an annuity, as you mentioned. But from your motion, and I think I agree with it, is let's first understand what that risk is before thinking about how to mitigate it or address it in some fashion.
Rob, I think I saw Robert's hand first.
Thank you, Jim. I think there's some point, and it's more a broader question for the board. Whenever something comes up, certain things, and I think Steve alluded to, that the issue for his firm is not, and Chuck, to answer Chuck's question, it's not a legal issue. It's more of looking at the numbers, the financial aspect of it. And I think in terms of when you start layering different professionals on top of each other, that number is gonna get large. And if the board is okay with a blank check, I'm okay with that. But I think we need to, at some point, and it's a much larger, broader process question, the board needs to kind of understand that when it comes time for legal opinion, we need to seek a legal opinion and focus on just the legal work. When it comes time for, in this case, understanding the numbers and or the liability in terms of dollar amount we're going to be liable for, then I think that goes beyond the legal at this point in time. So I think we should try to focus on the finding that entity out there ourselves. I mean, we got capable staff to go out and do the same type of search. And no offense on you, Steve, please don't get me wrong on this. I'm just saying, you know, this doesn't seem like we hire an attorney to go find some actuary folks to come back and for staff to give them the information that they need to do their evaluation on, and then go back through legal at that point in time. It's too much back and forth, too many hands touching it. There should be a phase-in process, and I think once we mix all this together, the dollar amount for us to hire these folks is the number's going to climb. So that's it.
Rob, did you have a comment?
Well, do you think an ad hoc committee is in order to oversee this process that Chuck has made a motion on?
You know, I'd like to take that up as a separate matter, Rob.
Oh, okay, fine.
No, I think, you know, that goes beyond the scope of Chuck's motion. You know, I just want to weigh in with my thoughts here. You know, given the complexity of this issue and the potential costs, I think we need to engage people who are expert. And, you know, Francine is very capable, and you know, she'll be working with Stephen Miller, and I trust both of them to be, you know, judicious in their use of district resources and you know, not being frivolous with you know, people that are brought into the mix. But you know, I think we owe it. We failed back in 1993 when we didn't execute a contract. We didn't, you know, we made promises that we didn't follow through on, that we didn't fund. So I think we need to get it right. You know, after 28 years, and you know, we've had people that have retired from us, that, you know, that they may think they have certain benefits coming that may not be there, and so I think we owe it to them, and we also owe it to the, you know, the people that elected us to these positions to be good stewards of district resources and make sure that we are you know, that we fix this in a cost-effective way that's fair to everyone, but you know, that makes the best use of district resources. So I will support this motion. So are there any other comments, or if there are not, Virginia?
Oh, so this does not include an ad hoc committee. I just want to make sure that we're very clear. We're not dealing with the ad hoc committee issue. This is just to engage Steve and working with Francine in tandem with our staff. I mean, if we certainly should have confidence in her, considering she's helping us get through this and has gotten us this far. So if that's part of your motion, Chuck, I mean, I think I seconded the motion, but
Yes, you did.
yeah. So I just want to I agree with you, Jim. We should keep our staff involved with this as well, which would mean Francine working in concert with Jim. So Chuck, I'm not sure if your motion covers that, or maybe it does. I don't know. With that, which would include our staff working with our legal team.
My motion does not include that. My motion basically, I'm trying to preserve the attorney-client privilege on the materials developed. My motion is to authorize our general counsel to engage experts that can help, financial and actuarial experts to help us understand the problem. I believe the attorney, Stephen, has indicated he plans to work with Francine, which is fine, but that's not my motion.
Okay, so Jim, are you okay with that, or do you want more specificity? Because I'm in agreement with you with regard to our staff. I think Steve and Francine will end up working together anyway, but what I don't want is for there to be any unclear guidance from any of us, because
Listen,
time
unless
is
you
not on our side.
Unless you specifically direct me not to, I'm going to
Okay.
work collaboratively with your staff as I should.
I know, but I just don't want any misunderstanding, not on your part, Steve, on this board's part. So that's why I just want clarification.
I think the minutes can reflect that.
Okay, I mean, because Jim, you and I, it sounds like we're on the same page right now, so.
Yeah, and I'm good with the motion and
Okay.
again,
Jim?
Stephen, Francine is one of the experts that Stephen will reach out to.
Okay.
Rob?
Yeah, could Michelle read the motion again, please?
I have that the motion is to authorize general counsel to seek professional guidance on CalPERS survivor benefits.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
All right, is there any further discussion on this? All right, Michelle, would you call the vote, please?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones? I'll
Aye.
come back. Thank you. Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right, Rob, you brought up the idea of an ad hoc. I don't know if you have a motion that you want to make relative to that.
Well, I threw it out there, but I'm thinking, let's have, Francine and Stephen and his legal staff give us, whatever the preliminary report will be. And then if we think an ad hoc committee is warranted, I'll make that motion.
Jim, I'd like to add something. I mean, could this be kept within the finance committee as well?
Well, I think, I see this touching on both the finance and HR committee. It's, I think certain aspects will touch on both. I mean, there's certainly a large fiscal element to all of this. So I think as it evolves and develops, and I'm glad we're taking this action tonight, because I think time is of the essence. We have this 12-month window in which to act on the contract amendment, which always seems like a lot of time, but given the complexity of this issue, I think the sooner we launch this, the analysis, and get the experts working on it and get them producing a report that really outlines the issues for us and makes some recommendations to us, and the sooner that process starts, the better. So, and that, I think as it evolves, it will land in both the HR and finance committees. So Chuck?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the ad hoc committee, because I think it would be a good idea to set that up. I understand what Rob's saying about, well, maybe we should wait and find out that, but I think the ad hoc committee could add expertise to this as well, and help bring out the expertise, or help ask the questions that would require the expertise to answer them. And I think ultimately it's the board that's going to have questions. Now, an ad hoc committee is not the whole board by any means, but I think it certainly is part of the board. And I think an ad hoc committee is a good idea. And I think we should, in fact, I would like to make a motion that we have an ad hoc committee to work with Stephen Miller and Francine to generate the expertise necessary to solve the problem.
I'll second that, Jim.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion?
So, Jim, I guess you would, as the board president, would put the ad hoc committee together? I mean,
Well,
I'll volunteer myself to be on the ad hoc committee then.
Our policy gives the president that discretion.
I know.
If I recall.
Could I ask you before you take action on this? I need about 30 seconds to just check one Brown Act issue that could impact this action, but I don't want to speak out of turn. So if I could just beg your indulgence for talk amongst yourselves for.
Right.
Jim?
Yes, Rob.
Well, since I originally brought up the ad hoc and what Chuck says makes a lot of sense, I would probably want to see you as the chair of the Human Resource Committee and Chuck as the chair of the Finance Committee to be that ad hoc. But I know it's totally up to you, Jim, as the board president to make those appointments. But I think that would make the most sense. Just as a discussion item.
All right.
Okay, thank you. False alarm. I had a sudden flash of a concern that turns out to have been unwarranted. So apologies, and please proceed.
Turn the sirens up. We're good.
Stephen, I have a question. Can if you have two members on the Finance Committee, Chuck and Virginia, can those same two people be put on an ad hoc committee?
Yeah, so good question. I don't know that there is a crystal clear answer. The answer is that the Finance Committee can't discuss issues that are within its subject matter jurisdiction without that being a meeting. So if you define an ad hoc committee to specifically oversee the work on the survivor benefit, so long as they really are only focused on that, I think I'm comfortable with that being an ad hoc committee and not bleeding into and actually being a meeting of the Finance Committee. I think underlying your question is the fact that the Venn diagram of the jurisdictions of these committees overlaps, but we'll do our best to keep the focus on the topic at hand and not skew into the Finance Committee territory.
Does that issue go away if you have one individual from HR and one individual from Finance?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you for that. Chuck?
I'd like to ask a related question. Stephen, if a confidential report from your office were to be discussed at both the HR committee meeting and the Finance Committee meeting, could those two meetings be closed meetings because of the confidential nature of the information?
It's a little hard to know now, but the confidential nature of the report is not what gets you into a closed session. You have to meet one of the exceptions in the Brown Act. But depending on the topic, it could be that this is eligible for closed session under one of the public employment exceptions or the labor negotiations exceptions.
Potential litigation.
Or could be, although potential litigation is not just, we think that there could be litigation. It actually has to be a threat of litigation made by someone else. So it's just premature for me to be able to advise on the closed session until we know more of what the facts are that would lead us into a closed session.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion to
I
create.
have a question, Jim.
Rob?
Regarding this prior motion in terms of authorizing Steve to move forward with, is there a budget limitation on the dollar amount we're talking about here in terms of not to exceed? Or
There wasn't one included in the motion. I'll just share my thoughts. I know this is going to be expensive, and we get regular bills from Hanson Bridget, and we can monitor it if we think it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
I have a problem.
This is why I welcome a committee oversight to keep track of that. I think that's helpful.
But that's not the ad hoc, is it, Jim? I mean, Steve, that you're thinking? What do you mean by committee oversight?
Well, I would welcome the opportunity to talk to someone to say, hey, we'd like to get Acme Consultant on board, but it's going to cost $100. Do you think that is something that the board is, I welcome to be able to talk to someone about that and not make that decision myself.
I think we need to really have some boundaries here. I understand Steve may not necessarily know offhand because you don't know what the actuary is going to be, their costs and fees going to be, or his fees for the most part. But are we talking about $500,000 or $250,000? I don't know. I'm just listen to what I'm saying. I'm just saying I feel uncomfortable with leaving the check open. That's the only thing I'm saying.
I would say that the motion before us right now is
I know.
the creation of this ad hoc committee. It's been moved and seconded, so I would ask any discussion be focused on that. I would just say I would look to an ad hoc committee to perform that role on behalf of the board. That would be one of the functions of that ad hoc committee. What are the costs? Who's being hired? Is it reasonable? Is it excessive? Is it a matter of concern? Is it something that needs to be brought back to the board? So I see an ad hoc committee performing those kinds of functions. Chuck, I think I saw your hand next.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the same thing, and that is, I think that an ad hoc committee should ask those questions. What's this going to cost? And I'll just tell you from my own standpoint, if this appeared like it was going to be costing more than, say, $50,000, I think that's something that ought to be brought back to the board, just personally. That's not part of the motion or anything. I'm just saying to you, the idea of $500,000, I think if I were a board member and I suddenly found out we'd spent $500,000 and we didn't know about it, I would be shocked. So,
well, how will the board know then?
I
Is
think
there going to be
Exactly.
there'll be monthly reports from the ad hoc committee? Or from
Exactly.
Steve? How will we know?
Well, again, it's
Well, the chief will know. I will be telling the chief and the ad hoc committee if you create one. And I'm
So
happy
I
to bring it
think in
back to the board
terms-
at any time for
Okay,
approval even. I can,
there's a motion before us, and I'd like us to stay focused on that. If somebody wants to,
Jim, what is the motion is right now is to create an ad hoc committee, not, I mean, we don't know who's going to be on it, right? So
right.
at this time.
Right. So if that motion is out there, if we could either, you could ask the author to, amend it to include, duties and responsibilities, or that could be a separate motion.
I mean, you had originally said that maybe we should kind of wait and see how things evolve. Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Well, again, for me, I think this becomes a driving force behind the creation of an ad hoc committee. Somebody can stay close to this issue, who's being hired, what are those costs, and bring that back for regular intervals to the board to keep the board apprised of this issue. And I just reflected on all the discussion that we've had this evening, as well as our meeting on the 15th. I think we all understand that this is going to require a lot of effort. Each individual case has to be examined. The people that do this kind of work don't come cheap, and I don't think we should try to do this on the cheap. I'm not advocating for a blank check, but there are going to be substantial professional costs associated with this effort. I think an ad hoc committee is a good way of staying abreast of those costs and reporting back to the board. And the board can, if they think it's excessive or out of control, the board can take action. So
Well, I mean, it sounds like, Jim, that three of y'all want you and Chuck to be on this ad hoc committee. Okay, because
Well-
it sounds like, let me finish, please. It sounds like a lot of the preparation for, or the questioning, the questions and the answers have been prepared, and that's fine. I appreciate that. This is really the first time I've thought about this ad hoc committee. I think that, there are some good things to it. I think there are some bad things to it. So if that's what you want, then just say it. And let's just get this thing done with, so that we're not belaboring this entire issue, because we don't have time. As I said, time is not on our side. So I would just throw it out there. If y'all want, if the two of you and Chuck, and Rob will be the third vote, maybe, want to do it that way, that's just say it. Let's just get it done. Otherwise, I would say, let's think through who should be doing this. Then we'll approve the ad hoc committee without the automatic rubber stamping of it. Should be the chair of the HR committee and the chair of the finance committee, and think it through what the checks and balances would be. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't need to be on the ad hoc committee, even though I volunteered to do it, but I don't think that's going to happen. But, Director Jones may have some concerns, and I'm not volunteering him. But what I'm saying is that everyone should be given the opportunity to be considered. And I don't think that's the case right now. That's all I'm saying. So if it's not the case, then let's just vote on all of this and just get this thing going, because we don't have time, and time is money.
Since membership of the ad hoc committee is not specified, is not proposed, I will exercise my discretion as president to name the members of the ad hoc committee, and I will consult with each of you, and before I make that decision. I'll give you that assurance this evening.
Jim?
So, Rob?
To all due respect to Director Crowley, I mean, my suggestion was, since they both chair those separate committees, and it appears it doesn't involve any type of a Brown Act issue relative to going back to those individual committees. I don't know why you had to turn a little bit of a spin on it. I mean, I'm within my right to make any type of a suggestion that I want to make, and I'm trying to, one, make sure that everyone is fairly treated here, especially these employees, and two, get this done the best way that we can, and three, come up with a reasonable solution, and four, stop the bleed. Okay, so we're all trying to do this together, and I resent any type of unprofessionality on my part that you've created some type of doubt. So thank you, Jim.
Hey, Robert?
Call for the vote.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? All right, Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
No.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. Is there any further discussion around any of these issues or any associated matters? All right. I just want to take a moment and again, thank Francine for all of her work on this issue. Thank you very much. I think we're well served by having you in that position now, and we look forward to your involvement in the resolution of this matter. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
He moved and seconded. Michelle, would you call the roll, please?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye. Aye.
thank you, Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye. All right. Thank you all for taking the time this evening, and I wish you a good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.